Who flew here? All right. Not everybody, but okay. Who that flew here had a window seat? All right. Who looks at outside and what's driving the plane? All right. Who knows Rolls-Royce and General Electric? All right. So who knows that a lot of the time now Rolls-Royce and General Electric jet engines are owned by Rolls-Royce and General Electric, and that they're selling thrust, right? So if you haven't worked for them, but if you ever see some of the things we can learn from the IoT industry, is just what was involved with operationalization of how you would sell their virtualized service being a jet engine thrust rather than jet engines. So selling a service, all the instrumentation, all the technology, all the capabilities are there. And I would argue a lot in our industry, all the capabilities, the technologies now are all coming together over the past couple of years. But the operationalization, can you say that fast? Operationalization, it's a little hard. I can get about 2 or 3 into it, is really important. How we look through it, how we apply to it, and I'll add from the IT, but from the IoT industry, how we approach these things. So, all right, I had some questions. First of all, let's see. A lot of us in the telecom world, we sell to businesses, right? So how do those businesses view us in the telecom world? Specifically, anybody know how much as a percentage of revenue they spend on IT? Anybody good guess? Come on, I'm getting active here. Any thoughts? Percentage of revenue a business spends on IT. 50%. It's usually I usually use 4% when I'm talking, right? Yeah. So, but, all right, 4%, that sounds pretty good, right? What do they spend on telecom and network of that? That's the whole IT budget, right? What do they spend of that 4%? Anybody got a good number of what that percentage? You almost raised your hand. No? All right, yeah, come on. Anybody out there in the back? You know? How much? It's usually people argue about 10 or 20%. So 10 or 20% of that 4%, if I can do the math, let's say 20 times 4 is 0.8%, right? So in the competition we're facing right now, if you look at how a business looks at the services we sell, while over the top, IT providers, a lot of different people are coming into this marketplace, and they're driving us to reduce our costs, et cetera. There's only so much, right? There's 0.8%, and even if we drive our costs down to 0, right, it's really not going to affect a lot of their bottom line. So how we think about it, how we deliver, how we compete in this area really has to think about how we're offering services that are much more dynamic. And in order to offer those dynamic services, i.e. like thrust on an airplane, we have to think about how we operationalize, how we can deploy at scale, and how we can think about these in different ways. One of the things, Klaus, you were talking 12 months. I think you were being very nice, right, as far as how quickly a service from conception to actually when we roll it out. To me, I've seen more experience about 18 months, right, from the time somebody thinks we're going to come up with this. And some of these services aren't terribly complex. They might be a WAN optimization service, maybe a little more complex on a content delivery network. But maybe even, some of these things now with SD-WAN that we're all talking about, from envisioning, all right, we're going to do this, and then how we're going to integrate it with the MPLS network, and then how we're going to do our product, and how we're going to get there. And eventually we get down to that 18 months. And it's a single service, it's a single capability, and we're not even sure if we got it right? So I was talking to one CIO that sells services in the candy industry. And oftentimes we think about what we have to do, but it's important to think almost what they have to do. So it's like, well, here I am at NEC Netcracker, and I sell capabilities into telcos and communication service providers, and we should call them digital service providers now, and cable companies, et cetera. And then they sell into often, they sell consumer, but let's just stay on the business track, into those IT departments that are in a business. And that business, should I stay over here? I'm going to get in here. No. I like to move around. I'm afraid to get over there, though. It's like, it really hurt the ears before. So they only have 4% of that revenue budget-wise, but they have to offer up services into their company. So in this case, it's an IT department of a very large candy company. And how often do we go to our IT departments to look for innovation, right? So a lot of the sales and marketing in that candy company not only is not really looking at IT, but they're looking at other over-the-top capabilities, et cetera. And so when we were talking about these delivery cycles where we're going to go 18 months for this new idea that he has, that we have and that he could use, and then it's going to take us 4 months to deploy, his marketing department in that candy company that's competing in the digital economy, they just don't have time for that. So therefore, they don't even talk to this IT department that we're trying to sell services, that I'm trying to sell services into. So you almost got to think back down the line. How do we get to the point now that not only do we offer services, that we can envision them and put them together, but how can we put them together in a way that we can deliver in a time frame that IT can look like heroes into that candy department, and that they can deliver and understand them quickly, and then deploy them in minutes and maybe decide not to deploy them or bundle them in different ways. And that's the key, right? Right now, I'd argue we're all, if you look at some of these presentations, we've all kind of done the first column here, right? And we're all into here. But if we use the same operational processes we've done, and I have seen it now, to try to create these new bundles, we can create them, but we're going to take a lot of months, we're going to take a lot of time, and we're going to take a lot of cost. And the other thing, people like myself who work on business cases, we say, this is how much market share we're going to get, et cetera. But the reality is you don't know, or at least there's enough that you don't know, that you're not quite sure. So how do you do those bundles very quickly, very operationally, in a way that you can either win or fail fast, or it's not really even winning or losing in that. Sometimes it's how do you modify, right? And a lot of people say on addressing a market, you usually have to have at least two, maybe 3 product iterations before you really start focusing in, right? Release 1.0 doesn't really hit it, but maybe release 1.1, but 1.2, finally you start getting some things. But if it takes that long, and it not only length, but if it costs that much, we can't get all of us going in that direction, like Klaus was talking about. If it's a Herculean effort to get there, we got to be able to operationalize so that we can figure out these bundles really quickly. So, obviously, operations need to change. And so how do we think about that? One of the things I often think about, and back into the IT world, I'd even call it beyond the IT world, I touched on the IoT a little bit, but into the sharing economy. How much are we thinking about how the sharing economy is working? How much are we looking at the platforms that the sharing economy is delivering in their capabilities? How often are we looking at why they're succeeding in certain things? How often are we looking at why people are using the sharing economy? How are we applying that to our operationalization? So it's going to have even tough time. Do we really think about it? Have we set up, like Klaus was saying, these certain organizations that rolled out our services for going on really since MPLS started? We kind of set these up in a certain way. But is the sharing economy set up that way? That's what's going in the future. That's what everybody's writing books about. That's what everybody's getting excited about. But when I talk about it, a lot of times in operations department, we start quickly talking about what our kids are doing, right? Or what the kids, decided, or how they don't want to buy a car, et cetera. But how are we embracing that? Here's a great new transformational market, and how are we taking some of those lessons learned in the sharing economy and applying them where we're looking? The other thing is, experience, and not our experience, but how are we thinking about user experience? And some of the presentations, I think today, or there was one of the panels this morning that I thought was really good. And in one case, they were saying, oh, the user experience has to be, very simple and straightforward, so that people can just push a button, right? And there's certainly a group that says, yes, that's the way the user experience needs to be. On the flip side, there's groups that say, this is very complicated, and there's a lot of value you can do from, ticking a lot of switches and doing a lot of different buttons and tweaking a lot of different things. And is one right or one wrong? The answer is no, right? I mean, the obvious answer is some people need some things and some people need another thing. So how are we creating a user experience, right? And again, back to in the IT world and the cloud world, there isn't one user experience. So how we're approaching things in when we're working with our customers, how are we looking at who's coming to us and what type of services we're offering from that user experience? Is there a organization that might be a small, medium business, maybe highly technically astute, but what they want to do is set up a VPN really quickly, and they want you to take care of it, right? So how do you have the same experience then, and then another organization coming in, they want to use your same type services, but they want to optimize and modify and analyze a lot of different things. So I mean, if you look at the cloud service providers today, right? If you go to the same portal that I go to, we're going to get different experiences, right? How are we setting that up in our digital service providers to do that? And that's what a lot of the things we're working on, so that user experience, it is not a static situation, and it is not looking at just certain customers in a certain way. We're realizing the way the experience has to be a many-to-many relationship, right? There's going to be a different experience for a certain set of customers, and by the way, we're probably going to have to use some intelligence, probably some machine learning, probably some, maybe some basic intelligence we get from our knowledge of our customers, but new customer sets coming in that we'll have to analyze that, and then we'll have to display services that make sense. And by the way, display bundles that make sense. And of course, do the A/B testing to say maybe it's this bundle, maybe it's not, because again, we don't really know all of that. So often, and I won't go into names, but in a previous life, we're looking at user experience and saying, all right, we're going to roll out this service, and yeah, let's get a bunch of us in the room, and we'll bring up the guy, and he's going to show us the experience and walk us through, and we're going to all say if we like it, and we're going to tell them to tweak it. And I'm just thinking, this is all wrong, right? First of all, who knows if we're right? Even if we were all in the room, who knows if, there probably, if there's a certain experience, there's something out there that none of us would quite get right. But second of all, it's not one answer. So how are we creating an environment, an experience, has to be much more the IT way, or I'd argue much more the cloud way. So, wow, I just heard myself in the, yeah. All of this is about the digital economy, and hopefully what I'm trying to emphasize today is how we think about operationalization really has to see how we're applying and how we're taking advantage of all the transformations, the Industry 4.0 that's going on, et cetera. So I almost think then all these things we just talked about in the previous couple slides, how do we make sense of it and how do we action it? How do we start saying, fine, I get all what you're saying, but what do we do about it? To me, the most important thing is start with a definition. So how do we define the digital economy? Everybody's got different definitions. I go with what MIT says. Jeannie Ross in the CSER, you can look her up, but everybody's got good ones. But she basically says that it's creating new products and services, it's creating new customer interactions and new ways of doing business, all of which inspired by the term SMAC IT, social, mobile, analytics, cloud, Internet of Things. So creating new products and services inspired by SMAC IT. New customer interactions inspired by SMAC IT. New ways of doing business inspired by SMAC IT. So specifically, we have to think, how do we create new products and services? Well, it's not a new product, it's not a new service. What we talked about before, and we have, all of us in this have experience, bundles do work. It's about how do we deliver a platform. And in the IT world, in the IoT world, in the sharing economy, it's all about delivering a platform from which to deliver many different types of services and bundles. So we have to roll out platforms, and we have to think about what our platform is and all the different functionalities and capabilities, but the service has to be launched from a platform. So that's the new products and services coming from a platform in the digital economy, like the IT and the cloud people do. But platform's not enough. Like we talked about before, the second part is new customer interactions, right? New products and services, new customer interactions. Our whole view of customer experience has to be focused towards this new way of thinking, the way cloud services and IT services deliver services, where my experience is going to be different than your experience, where we're going to use machine learning, where we're going to use A/B testing and figure out, and we're going to provide a capability that we're going to go to market on that platform for experiences that are tailored to what we're trying to do, not a rigid thing that we're going to develop over 18 months. So new products and services, hopefully the new customer interactions, new ways of doing business. How we approach going after things. You know, I often, and again, we're getting there. I promise it's the last second. I think you know, how I've been a product manager in past lives and how I've launched products, and most of the time I'll, you know, think about it and I'll create, I was like, yeah, this is going to be good, and I'll try to make the pitch, and sometimes I'm good at it, sometimes I'm not, and I'll create the business case and we'll go to market, right? The experience in the IT world and the cloud world is much more iterative, and figuring it out as you go, and not relying on what I think or what you think and all, but how we're getting to market, how we're quickly looking at things and iterating from. So the whole approach on go-to-market is got to be much more the scientific, the statistical method, the ability to look through things the way the IT world is looking. And I think that's 1 minute to spare, right?
Perfect.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
Yeah.
2 seconds, we'll get applause. There's one at the back.
All right. All right.
Over here, at the back?
I can speak.
Yes.
I like the Netcracker approach the most, in the sense of pinpointing where the problems are. But I didn't really see any solutions, to be very honest, because you're saying you should be talking about the whole services. There needs to be a language description. Do you have any ideas on doing that, on how to do that? Do you know how to do automation based on that? Is there anything that you can actually say about that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. And I want to be cautious not to pitch our capabilities, but you know, our whole approach to SDN and NFV is a platform-based. You know, we have a booth down there we can go through, but it's a platform-based architecture where you do all the standards and all the technologies today, but then you launch services using that platform. The interaction is all what we're working with a lot of customers is doing that new customer experience. So we're a digital marketplace that is tailored like we're talking about, and that does the A/B testing, and that figures out these things, as well as then we have a whole practice around working customer engagement. So yeah, specifically all those 3 things we're very much emphasizing. I don't want to really sell right now, but I'd be happy to talk to you about very tangible things that we're working with a lot of people here in the room and here throughout the show on.
Okay, thanks.
Great. One more question over here?
So, I really liked your presentation,
Thank you.
but I argue with your 4%.
Okay.
There's a microphone.
I'll tell you why.
All right, this is good. Now, I got you thinking like me,
No,
so we're good.
No.
Yeah.
So, you talked about the jet engines.
Yes.
So today,
Yeah.
there is, by weight, more weight of digital sensors in the jet engines than there is propulsion.
Okay.
One flight produces 6 terabytes of data.
Okay.
So for General Electric and for Boeing, 4% does not begin to tell the story of how much data and the importance of data and the money being spent on data in that business. And that is a trend that we're seeing across industry today.
So very cool, and I stand corrected. I'll add to that, and not to get into terms. You hear Gartner talk about it, but shadow IT, right? A lot of that spending, and that's what that candy company CIO I was talking to. Those marketing departments are spending on a lot of things that really seem digital. They really seem not networky, but they really seem IT. But they're not going to the IT departments, and the IT departments are the ones who are buying digital services from communication service providers. They're going over the top. They're going. You disagree? All right.
Well, we're going to have to wrap up this
We'll
part.
continue. All
Feel
right.
free to talk to Mark afterwards.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mark.
All right. Thanks. Yeah.